Hello, I'm Sora Luxon, and this is Magic Lesson number 49, Victims and Heroes. And no one is fully either of those things, so it's not an either or. I want to go over the failings of desperation, energetic impulses, and why they don't work, along with how to move away from them as a magical practitioner and what to do instead that will work. You can't really discuss one without the other because wherever you find desperation magic being attempted, you also find an individual that first and foremost is usually just lacking in confidence. And so all of their actions, behaviors, magical or otherwise, are going to be influenced by that to some degree or another. They're going to be operating from that place, from that insecurity rather than confidence. One of the most moving messages I've received lately, to date, maybe actually, came recently from a basketball player. Now, there isn't much detail about this person's level of sport, where and how they play, whether it's a high school student or someone on a college or neighborhood league or some other higher level. It doesn't really matter which, because it's clear from their DM to me that they take their level of play in pursuit of this skill set and ability to grow within it very seriously. So it matters very much to them. It makes it a very serious matter for them. So it doesn't even matter, which version of basketball they're playing. And they're wondering if, or given the tone of the message, more honestly, more authentically struggling with, in real emotional distress and confusion here, over why their energetic intentions around the sport aren't working the way they want, because they were for a time and now they aren't. It's sentences like, I practice and practice, I don't get better. Everything else I attempt in the occult when I practice, I do get better. I visualize. I've even tried spell work. You get the idea. It's that sort of a letter. It's very victim role mentality, whether or not they realize they're doing that. And they're asking for insight into how they could use magic or use the magic they're using better to help improve their play or overcome what could be a plateau, perhaps. They could just be plateauing at their current level of progression in this specific sport. And keep in mind, maybe for you it isn't basketball. Maybe, the height of achievement in that realm isn't your thing. Maybe it's something else. It doesn't really matter what it is. This little podcast will still be a useful source for you to draw on, especially because this exact sort of email or message is very, very common in my inbox. So I know other people will have the same sort of questions or the same type of dilemma. This happens a lot. People stepping forward or reaching out to me or to the occult in general because they're desperate in one way or another, struggling under the burden of some very heavy requirement that's been placed on them or that they've placed on themselves, that they feel they aren't accomplishing or doing well or can't take anymore. A lot of the time, it's along the lines of, I'm doing everything right. Why am I still not happy? I get that sort of a desperation email a lot. That expectation of being giddily, rapturously joyful all the time, of something similar to that sort of an ecstasy state, maybe, that is the requirement they've now made on themselves, and that they now think by not feeling that way that they're failing somehow, or that they could do better, or the suspicion that they should never be unhappy, right? That they should never be afraid. And if they are unhappy or afraid, if they are frightened, miserable, exhausted from the labors, mental, spiritual, physical, or otherwise, of this life and series of experiences, if they're depressed and feeling weak from the loss of a loved one, maybe, I get those letters. All of those very real, authentically evoking experiences that we travel through, often people seem to have this idea that they can't be or shouldn't be experiencing those emotions, that they shouldn't be scared or sad or stressed or grieving even. And they're actually judging themselves and seeking to stop those processes. All of those emotional upheavals that we label quote unquote bad, like somehow existing and not yet being a perfectly balanced ascended master, is a negative thing somehow. It isn't. It seems a little silly to have to say that, but if I'm saying it, I maybe also need to hear it, right? It isn't a negative thing to not yet be anything other than human. There's a reason Metatron isn't described inhabiting one human body on Earth, walking around calling himself Dave or Sarah or something, right? Living what we're living while we're here. The ascended aren't in the realm of experience. We are. They aren't here dealing with the current path working that we are doing actively, even if we don't want to sometimes. So this expectation people often have of themselves, as if they ought to be perfect or aiming for no emotion or not feeling things or transcended beyond what are being labeled as negative human emotions. It's kind of funny how people always want to get beyond what's considered a negative emotion, but they're not usually also asking to get beyond things like joy, ecstasy, happiness, right? And they're both emotions, right? So wanting to not have them, that's just not rational. All of these things, these experiences, these emotions that we confront, judging them as being one way or another, and then judging ourselves if we have what we consider to be the bad ones, right? Or these emotions that we have evoked in us while we're living all of the lessons that this beautiful journey we get to take, right? And discomfort, until we move past it, all of those things are part of that journey. As is, grief, irritation, fear, anxiety. Those aren't bad things. Those are energetic opportunities. Those are offerings, gifts being given to us, opportunities for evaluation and evolution in ourselves. And they wouldn't be coming into our sphere of reality without purpose, without necessity, without being exactly where they need to be when they need to be there. I had this other really amazing direct message from someone last week that was just the most beautiful and really bravely intimate sharing of their journey. I could tell this person was pretty advanced in the occult. It was very obvious. And they were describing their life experiences in some small way thus far. Instagram doesn't allow for a full-length novel, but their intuitions and insights, even current fears and struggles in maintaining the torch, keeping it lit, keeping it aloft in the middle of a huge raining storm, while wanting very badly to take a knee and put it out and be asked less of, required less of, because it's no small thing we do out here in the dark, valiantly soldiering on despite everything. That message that I read, that's coming up for me as well while I'm doing this podcast right now, because we all have that. That's another one of those. That one's a little more common with people who are very experienced in the craft that come across those feelings. It comes later after a handful of years after you start energetic training, because we all get there. We all have that, especially towards the higher grades or thresholds. Energetic burnout, right? I mean, you could just call it that, where you can just see what seems like this impossible task and how daunting it is becomes almost this existential crisis, because you can finally actually see what it is you're grappling with. And you kind of wish you didn't see it. So this almost eternal task becomes very real. And you kind of just want to curl up and take an occult nap or a spiritual magical nap somehow, right? You just put yourself into a mild coma, take a break for a while. Just like, no, I'm gonna check out this cycle, guys. I'll take a pass, right? It's all too much. I fully empathized with what this person was saying, that we all hit that at some point. It's something I'm not sure that they were very aware of, but we do. If we keep at the craft long enough, at the great work, we do all kind of hit that. It's a very common ailment for high magic practitioners, high priests, monks, wizards, witches, warlocks, waypost guides. Whether you're Gandalf or Jesus, if you have knowledge that many don't, and you garner abilities in your temporal labors during this life, and you are completely aware of the responsibilities and necessities that come along with those abilities, those things that will then be required of you, you're going to hit crucible moments. Kind of forgive them, they're morons. Right? Forgive them. They know not what they do. But I'll just keep shining that light, right? I'll just keep hanging out up here, loving all of you while having spears shoved inside of me. No. It's fine. Don't mind me. I'm just trying not to fall off into the void or ascend beyond all of you too quickly. But that's okay, Sometimes those crucifixion-esque moments, because we all bear crosses. We all magically or otherwise are vulnerable to physical and spiritual hurts and exhaustions. And they can last years, if not lifetimes, those moments. Sometimes they can stretch out. Anyway, something to look forward to in Magick for all of you. Sacrifices will be made, and your tortured patience to persist rather than give up is one of those sacrificial offerings. And there are going to come times when you aren't thrilled about that. We've all been there, or rather we all get there. We all find that wall and just sort of blink at it dumbfounded and more than vaguely annoyed by it. A sort of a scuffing at the dirt in front of it with our toe, like, are you serious? I did all of that and now this? For real? I mean, where's, the chaise lounge already? Where's a nice hammock and a Mai Tai? That I deserve some of those little drink umbrellas, but no, right? Just a big old wall out here in the middle of nowhere that I have to deal with. Iron Man gets cool toys and girls, I get this. It's totally fair. And you kind of do wind up coming somewhere within yourself where you're going to have a moment of heck with this already. And that's another more occultedly advanced form of desperation, but it's still a form of desperation and very real. I'm on a tangent. It was a really great message, and when I began talking about desperation, it made me think of it. And like I've said before, it's so wonderful to be given the chance to learn from and with you when I receive messages like this, as we make these energetic exchanges with each other. You know who you are. Thank you. Some part of you might have been struggling very badly in that moment when you wrote that. But because of your advanced training, your awareness and self-intuitive dialogue and courage, you actually wound up resonating with and buoying me. Thank you. To get back to the basketball player message, I'm sorry, I've been neglecting you. You aren't doing anything wrong other than you're doing everything in your magic wrong. And I'm going to explain that. Having expectations of yourself, drive, the focused and determined pursuit by will to accomplish whatever skill or goal that you have set for yourself, that's dead on. In the paint, nailed it, good. That is a cult. But having said that, given the way you've expressed yourself to me in this letter, in this DM direct message, I can tell that your intention work, the energetic visualizations you describe, even the small ritual you described, none of that is going to work for you given the way you're currently doing it. And by that I mean that you are practicing desperation magics, which don't work. You're coming at your casting, mental, visual, spiritual, physical, from not just an intention to improve and manifest that improvement, but also from very badly needing it, from requiring it of yourself to where you're not just demanding it from yourself, but where you're actually judging and then critiquing and harshly criticizing yourself internally for not getting there yet, which is why you're doing the magic in the first place, because you're coming from that sort of a mental place, wanting and wishing for it so badly, but also a lot of, self-hate going on, that what you're actually doing is pushing the spell effect you want accomplished away. That is what desperation magic does. That's why most love spells don't work. On top of being baneful magic that's always chaotic and winds up rebounding on whatever fool is bothering to cast it, it's usually being done as desperation magic, which is the lucky thing with baneful magics. A lot of magics, like love spells, don't work at all because they're being done out of desperation, which is good for everyone involved that they don't work. But when you do desperation magic, you are not just putting a barrier between you and what you want. You're actually willing it out of existence. You're continually willing it beyond any generation within your reality. I actually discussed this in some depth in earlier videos. So if you'd like, you can go back and listen for that information. It may really help. But basically, your magic, whatever form, however you want to think about it, isn't working because you already know it isn't. You think it isn't. And yes, hoping or wishing for something to happen is actually an energetic acknowledgement that it isn't happening. If you're wishing that something would happen, what you're saying to the universe is, this isn't going on. And if you're constantly acknowledging that, that is what you're creating. That is what you're willing. That is what you're manifesting. So if you're constantly acknowledging that something isn't happening, then no, it's not going to. As simply as I can put it, you have to put the internal gratitude, appreciation, ecstasy, thrill, as pure and emotionally heightened as you can, projective adoration, thankfulness. You have to put that thankfulness at the most authentic level of sensation, thankfulness for being the world's best basketball player. That's what needs to be going into your magic, your visualizations, your rituals, however you're coming at it. Because even though you aren't there yet, that's how magic works. You embody what you're casting for or invoking as if it's already happened. And you have to really tie emotion to that for it to be taken up by the subconscious to where the conscious mind doesn't need to have anything to do with it. And then the manifestation is going to generate despite you, despite every possible mistake in the world. It already exists what you want. Whatever you're using your will by intention to lay a hold of, it's already right there. It's already there, waiting on you to acknowledge that it is there, that it does exist. And if none of that makes sense to you or works for you, consider pursuing some formalized Hermeticism. The ceremonial taking of name is, there's so many different wonderful rituals that could really help someone in your situation. But taking of name is extremely useful for athletes, all sorts of athletes. It can really allow for the very real and expert player that is already in you to be called upon at will. Slightly higher level of occultism at work there, and it does require groundwork. When you're dealing with the subconscious and development, there are risks. And so it's important to do the groundwork correctly and put the safeguards in place that are paramount, which is why I'm being so vague about this. But naming is a very useful tool if you want to reach for that key and take up that directed occult practice. Hermeticism is one way of gaining access to it. You see this publicly all the time now. It's much more common and less of an occult secret than it used to be, even just a few decades ago. And some people actually just stumble onto it by virtue of its necessity as they push themselves beyond the levels of calming conditioning. Like when pro athletes talk about alter egos, that alter ego that rises to the challenge, rises to the occasion when it's given permission to do so, or is purposefully released upon an opponent. There's no small amount of high power in the taking of name, or the creation of a compartmentalized series of attributes or qualities that can be brought forward at will as one entity. Not a counter persona, but another persona that can be honed and utilized and also contained, balanced. Sometimes this is mislabeled as alter egos or multiple personalities. You'll hear celebrities say, "Oh, I have multiple personalities," right? I say it's mislabeled because mental health is a very real issue. It shouldn't be made a joke of. I in no way would ever marginalize, trivialize, or obfuscate mental health with what I'm discussing. What I'm talking about is something very different. For a very long time, it was very occulted knowledge, although more and more people seem to be taking advantage of it. And it's often misunderstood, even today, like most of magic is. But something that helps rather than hinders and is an acquirable magical ability, which, again, some people are starting to make more public, fearing less each day the ignorance of judgment, that's a good thing. When they know the heights of their genius or physical achievements very much are directly linked to the mind, and they're working with that actively, right? On all that ability to comprehend and then employ comprehension in ways others perhaps don't, right? Most people don't. I think Serena Williams is named Summer, right? It actually isn't. She refers to Summer as a friend, an assistant, the person that helps her, and it is her, and she also acknowledges that. It isn't actually possible for anyone to be functioning at a peak level of performance, or at least that peak level of performance that pro athletes require of themselves in specific instances. You can't be functioning from there all the time. You'd be exhausted. You wouldn't function well. And valiant, blistering conquest isn't exactly suitable nor usually appreciated nonstop in daily life. Full throttle, full out attempts to race across a room and tear open a bag and slam down that switch to make that toast for breakfast is going to have you winding up with sliced bread all over your floor, a broken toaster, and everyone around you thinking that you are maybe a little bit psychologically imbalanced, and that is not useful. Being able to become that source energy, surging forward at will, that is useful and sometimes necessary if it's already going on. If you want to, if that's a technique you choose for yourself, there are other techniques and other ways. So don't think you have to. Don't think you have to go out and find out what the taking of name is. But if you choose to, and you choose to pursue it correctly and do the right groundwork, it's very useful for athletes. Evolving to be more than we've been taught thus far to think we are is certainly not a dishonorable or unrewarding pursuit, no matter how you look at it. My point is, you don't have to limit yourself. You don't have to think the way others do. You certainly don't have to come at your magical practices from a place of either pure heroic arrogance or victimized desperation. Confidence, fellow truth seekers, confidence. Arrogance and confidence are not the same things, right? It's kind of the other pole, right? Everything's polarized. People who aren't coming at their magic from a desperation magic will sometimes be on the other pole, which is just as bad. They're coming at their magic cocky, very arrogant, just like this. I am the best there ever was. I am the greatest. This is how it is because I am just so wonderful. That doesn't work either, because arrogance isn't actually authority. Authority is humble while projective. Because authority knows it's in control, it doesn't need to prove it's in control. And authority really is what you're going to need to use magic correctly, and then also real gratitude. And you're not going to get either of those things coming through you if you're being very arrogant, if you're being, you already think you're a hero. So whether it's victim or hero, either side of the pole, desperation magic or far too arrogant magic, neither of those things is going to work. Confidence and thankfulness. That's where your magic spawns from. I am great. I can't miss at basketball. And I feel the ball leave my hand. Gratitude. I know it's left my hand just right. Still. I smell the air while it arcs towards the net. For the opportunity to hear the cheer go and up for my team as it goes in. Such appreciation again for being here now and capable of this. Thank you for how good I am at this. Try that sort of a thing in your next visualization. Feel it. Cry. Smile. Moan. Whatever you do when you get there. When you get there in that headspace, that's the energy you bring up and then project in magic. Then your intention is going to work. The amplification is going to take effect. Your spell, ritual, visualizations, they're going to work immediately, incredibly well, and without you once having to stop to think about it when you're back on the court. Until next time.